joining us right now,
There
the star of Bama football on YouTube, the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Henderson. Kyle, my bad.
Yo, you know what? The thing about me is I am never late. I'm the earliest dude to every single thing. So it's just part of me, but happy to be here again. Happy to break it down. Texas 34, Alabama 24. Let's dive into it.
Man. Yeah, Kyle, I mentioned earlier, your actual score was the only one I heard that was almost to the score. You had 31-24. You had it reversed, though. Give us a thought just give us your thoughts on the game. Where did you see, things go wrong for Alabama? What's the ultimate reason they lost?
Yeah, well, number one, I mean, Texas is a very good team, and I think that they came in here with the right mindset. You listen to Steve Sarkisian following the post game, and he understands that psychological disposition that you have to have when you come into a hostile environment like Bryant-Denny Stadium. With that said, Texas has a lot of firepower on the offensive side, and I thought their defense was a lot better than I anticipated. A couple of statistics that really stand out to me were the fact that Alabama was not able to get to Quinn the entire night. I mean, we talked about that was probably one of the areas that I missed on looking at this game going into it, was the fact that I felt that Alabama could get pressure on Quinn, and certainly they couldn't. I mean, they had just 3 pass hurries or 3 hurries and 0 quarterback sacks. So that's something that needs to improve when you get into higher marquee games. The other factor was the fact that Texas, their defensive line completely bullied Alabama's. I mean, that was amazing. Sometimes they were only rushing 3 defenders, sometimes 4. It wasn't these overwhelming type blitzes. And I think some of them were coverage type sacks as well. And I still think that, Jalen Milroe, I mean, he just was too inconsistent. And Coach Saban was asked following the game if he thought about going to another quarterback, and he did. But then Jalen Milroe comes in with a touchdown, and even Alabama takes the lead. Alabama had chances in this game, but Texas was the better team. Quinn was the better quarterback. Texas had the better O-line. Texas had the better D-line. Texas had the better offensive coordinator. And, Texas comes out on top in a very marquee victory early in the season. Coach Saban said today, the future is now. They turn to the next game, which is against South Florida. They're still 0-0 SEC play, but I think Texas played a great game coming into Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Kyle, Chad and I were talking about this 20, 30 minutes ago. We were trying to put ourselves in the shoes of Bama fans today and trying to figure out, is there a number one prevailing thought from this game? Is it got to have a new quarterback? Is it what's up with Saban? Was there a thing? Is there a number one talking point coming out of Saturday?
I mean, it's clearly, the overreaction. A lot of it is, self-made, because this is what Alabama fans are not accustomed to, losing this early in the season. Later on in the season, I mean, there's a typical drop, but the fans are disappointed. Tyler Booker, who was an offensive lineman, he said that we're pissed off. That was his quote. The fans are disappointed in the execution from the offensive standpoint. Here you got a first-year offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees. You got a new quarterback taking over. So there's a lot of finger pointing going on. And, there's a lot of other media outlets saying that it's time for Coach Saban to retire and for Coach Prime to come over and be the head football coach. I mean, it's the apocalypse over here. So Coach Saban reiterated that this is fixable. And, we'll see if it's fixable. There's a lot that didn't go well for Alabama against a quality team. They're going to face more quality teams coming up. They have, after South Florida, they take on Ole Miss. And those are 2 former Saban disciples with Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding, who was a defensive coordinator last year. That game could get squirrely. Lane Kiffin, he plays at a very high level. They don't have the horses that Texas have, but I mean, that's a SEC game. Then there's a 4-game gauntlet for Alabama coming up. You have a trip to Texas A&M. You have LSU. You have Tennessee. And you have Arkansas. And that's a 4-game stretch with the open week there in between. So things have to be fixed, absolutely, for Alabama. Texas is a good team. Alabama could be a good team. They're not a good team right now, but that's not to discredit anything that Texas did, because they got the job done. Quinn did a really good job getting the ball out to Sanders, Worthy. There are so many playmakers on that team, and it was a really good performance from Texas on Saturday.
Kyle, we were talking about the scheme earlier, and if I'm a Bama fan, I think I'd be a little concerned that it felt like they were trying to beat Texas with Milroe and McClellan, We were talking about that earlier. Do you feel like that? I mean, you just mentioned some of the weapons Texas had. I feel like Alabama kind of brought a offensive knife to a gunfight here. Is that fair to bring up? I was waiting to feel the weaponry, and it felt like they were just trying to beat them with number 2 and number 4.
Alabama doesn't have any type of offensive identity right now. None. They don't know if they're just going to rely on Jalen, if they're going to go to another quarterback. They don't know if they can run the football. Through 2 games, they don't have a running back that has rushed for over 100 yards. That stands out to me. The offensive line is not as established as I thought it would be through 2 games. That stands out to me. Jalen Milroe was phenomenal in week 1. Against Texas, he was inconsistent. Coach Saban said going into the first game that Alabama needed a quarterback that was consistent. The problem with Alabama's schedule is it's inconsistent. Middle Tennessee, Texas, South Florida, back to Ole Miss. So even if Alabama goes with a different quarterback in South Florida, of course they're going to look great. That's no disrespect to the Bulls, but I mean, when you're a 31-point favorite and Alabama's pissed off, I mean, you're going to run into a buzzsaw. Then you get back on track against Ole Miss. So it's complicated because the season schedule is inconsistent at this point. Jace McClellan was running hard. I thought he was doing a fine job. And I thought Jalen Milroe, when he got to the outside edge, I mean, he's the best athlete on the field for sure. The first interception shouldn't have happened. The second one was terrible. But then, he did make some good throws. I mean, the throw that he made to Jermaine Burton, that's a big time throw. But the receivers bailed him out. Some of the guys going up top to make some really good catches, adjustments to the ball. But he did miss on a pass to Jace McClellan that was a for sure touchdown. There's a lot to work on. I don't know if he's the quarterback. I think that they should probably give another quarterback an opportunity to see if they can develop some sort of consistency. That's what Alabama needs at the quarterback position. Their season isn't over by any stretch of the imagination. Texas didn't win the national title on Saturday. Alabama didn't lose a national title. These 2 teams could very well meet again in the playoffs. But there's a lot to take away from, and Texas did a great job coming in. Their defense is much, much better than I anticipated for sure.
That goes kind of the question I was going to ask you, Kyle, next, which was simply, if we were to focus on an area about Texas that surprised you, is it the entire Texas defense? Was it the matchup in the trenches where, it felt like Texas got the better of the Alabama offensive line? And that was one of those matchups that we talked about during the week where it was like, Alabama likes their offensive line. They like they're young at left tackle, but really talented. And in the end, I have to believe that they would have expected to play better, but they may not have expected Texas to be quite as good as they were. It's one thing that Tavondre Sweat is a really good player, but Texas across the board played really well up front.
Yeah, I think when you look to Texas, the defense, the secondary is way better than I thought. They did a great job. And there was at times I would look down in the field and everybody was covered. They did a great job, eliminating big plays from Alabama that could be theoretically if Jalen was able to get the football out. They made good interceptions. They caused 2 key turnovers that were instrumental to the game. But I think that the defensive line is outstanding. I want to continue to maybe go back in 5 or 6 games and see what Texas, their defensive front is doing. They bullied Alabama's offensive line. I haven't seen that take place since 2017 when Auburn, with their nasty defense, who ironically their defensive coordinator at the time was Kevin Steele. I had never seen that because it's so uncommon for teams to bully Alabama in the trenches. I mean, these guys have a offensive line that's bigger than NFL type offensive lines. And I think that, sometimes the size is a little bit overrated because you do need to be athletic. I mean, Caden Proctor, poor dude. I mean, freshman in a big time game in front of 100,000, he was in trouble. Darian Dalcourt, who's a grad over here, he was in trouble. Seth McLaughlin, he couldn't even snap the football. I think that was a lot of nerves. So there was a lot going on with that offensive line. They need to fine tune it. They need to maybe switch it up a little bit because that was a big area of concern along with the quarterback play.
Talking with Kyle Henderson, good enough to come on with us today and breaking it down after Texas wins 34-24. So, Kyle, coming out of it, or going into it, rather, we talked about the atmosphere and what it would be like. Give us a sense for it. I heard some criticism of, did the Bama students show up for game day? Was the number really that big? Did you get the sense that this was at the level of an LSU coming to town, a big game against Tennessee? Did it have the feel you thought it would have?
Maybe not quite to a late season showdown with LSU. But it was a great atmosphere. And I know that picture circulating about College Game Day, I think that was for Pat McAfee, because that was around the time that I was there. So the timing of all that stuff, I mean, we could alter any type of images, right, that we want to. But I was physically there, and there was a great turnout. You couldn't go to any type of restaurants. And I think that statistic, or whoever had that stat about all those planes trying to land at the poor Tuscaloosa airport, I think that was fact. Like there was a lot going on. You couldn't drive anywhere in the city. It was a big time environment. It's awesome. And that burnt orange, it just stands out so much against the crimson or the houndstooth, like everywhere you looked. And then one of the things that I liked, like even up in the press box, just seeing Matthew McConaughey just rolling down and just kind of the energy that he brings it's pretty cool to see. I don't think, Alabama has all of their celebrities are guys playing on Sunday in the NFL, right? I mean, it's like Bama built by the NFL. You see all these quarterbacks, but that was pretty cool to see from that perspective. But yeah, the student section was completely full. Bryant Denny was lit. I mean, that's an amazing atmosphere. If you haven't been to an Alabama game, specifically at night, you need to check it out. They've done a really great job with the lights, the sound system, kind of how the DJ spins it when the lights go down. It's a great atmosphere. That's all college football. But I will say this, the commercials are plaguing college football. They're taking away from the pageantry. There was so much time of like guys standing around. I think it probably affected, Texas offense and Alabama. Like it's hard to get in a rhythm when there's so much standing around. Sure, there's a little bit more time to look at maybe some diagrams or talk to your players, but so many commercials. And I think it really takes away. Plus, I feel like the game's a little bit sped up. I don't really like that aspect of what's going on in terms of that, but everything else was great.
In our Specs super chat, we had a question for all of us from Buck Wild Longhorn, Catch Chad, Kyle. It's an interesting question. What is your top 4 CFP projection after week 2? Buck Wild, I'm going to be completely honest. I haven't given it any thought. Guys, I'll go first. Georgia's got to be in, right? Florida State and Texas have the 2 big wins. So I would put them in as of today. I don't know. Notre Dame? Like, I don't know who the 4th team is.
Like the AP agreed with you and then added Michigan. I think Notre Dame and USC probably are in the discussion too. With the way
I don't know why Michigan's getting the love they're getting. They lost to TCU in the playoff, right? And nothing's happened since then.
Kyle, what do you think?
I guess, I'm not buying Florida State. I'm not buying Notre Dame. I mean, those 2 teams, things tend to get squirrely for some of these teams, even Texas included. And that's no disrespect. It's like sometimes teams find themselves in these weird games against like Texas Tech or an NC State. I mean, Notre Dame has gone toe-to-toe with Syracuse for like the last several years. You like turn on the TV and it's like 7-0. And you're like, really, Notre Dame? Like, so I think that, if Texas is able to have a strong showing in the back end of their schedule, that those trap games against Iowa State and Texas Tech scare me if I'm a Texas fan, 100%, because you start to eat the rat poison, right? Bama clearly has work to do. Georgia, their schedule is so light. So you got Georgia, you probably have Michigan, and then you have USC because I think they'll have a strong showing against Colorado here coming up. Plus, that's a pretty good team. I mean, they got the returning Heisman Trophy winner and that freshman who's kind of like Reggie Bush-esque. And then the 4th team, I don't know. It's usually, it could be Texas at this point. So something like that. But I'm not really buying like the FSU in Florida or the FSU and Notre Dame just yet. I think those teams need to continue to win. I mean, I've seen this time and time again with Florida State because I follow them. My good buddy Gene Williams covers War Chant, and like they're doing so well, and then pretty soon they're in 4 overtimes with like Jacksonville State or something.
This just in, guy who covers Bama, not thoroughly impressed with the rest of college football. It's fair enough. It's fair.
Consistency.
It's fair.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Zachariah Branch. If you haven't seen him, dude is phenomenal.
He's incredible. Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah, I know. And your bar for college football has obviously been set really, really high, which is why I think Saturday night was interesting because, Kyle, we talked about it throughout the week. Texas is now the first team since 2012 began that went to Tuscaloosa, trailed at any point, and won the game. And they won by 10. Nobody had won by more than 7 over Saban at Tuscaloosa. The fact that they won by 10 and dropped 2 balls either in the end zone or right near the end zone. To me, that said a lot. I thought it was just really impressive what they pulled off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they played a great game. I think, kind of playing like the what if games, the two, like what could be fumbles were huge for Texas to keep a hold of, right? And that first possession, because I felt like the crowd atmosphere was so intense to begin with. And if Alabama recovers that fumble on the opening drive or whatever it was, holy cow. So turnovers definitely played a factor in that. So I was also surprised with 2 things. Alabama had 10 penalties for 90 yards, and I thought Texas did a good job. Only 4 penalties, and you come to an environment like that, it was tough. Alabama fans were trying to be as loud as they could. So for Quinn to be able to orchestrate that offense was also something. So look, Alabama has so much to work on. No identity, no pass rush. Texas came in and they were a lot better on defense. I think the offense, I knew that they were going to be very talented. I agree with you. Worthy did drop that touchdown pass on that out route, and which led to 3 points, and he beat Kool-Aid on that. He made an amazing catch when Quinn put the ball up, and he was able to beat Caleb Downs for that touchdown. That was a really incredible play. No, those guys are for real. I mean, I think Sanders, if you're an NFL scout, you're number 0. He's phenomenal. I mean, that guy's going to be playing on Sundays. Worthy's going to be playing on Sundays. There's a lot of NFL guys on Texas right now, and you're right. Like when we were going into the game, and there's more NFL talent right now at this time of the season on Texas roster, 100%. That's a quality team for sure.
It's crazy that's where we've landed. Kyle Henderson, Bama football on YouTube. Kyle, thank you. We should have you on the payroll at this point. We will be in touch come Alabama week. I mean, A&M week, because Chad's definitely going to want to have some Alabama A&M analysis and breakdown. But for a couple of days at least, you don't have to see us anymore.
All right. Yeah. Hey, so you guys make the playoffs. I'll be your college football, analyst. I'll come on.
There it is.
All right.
Thanks, Kyle.
I appreciate you guys.
Have a good rest of the week, my man. Kyle Henderson, Bama football on YouTube. If you haven't been to his YouTube page, I don't know why you wouldn't have, especially after the last week. Go there, give him a subscription, get notifications on that page. He's got one of the best college football platforms on YouTube.